My apologies. I had in my calendar 12:30.
No worries, no worries. We are now recording and I am about to hit the go live button. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Facebook family, leaders out there. Listen, we say good morning to the leader in you. We say good morning to your possibilities. We say good morning to your dreams. We say good morning to those goals that we know that you're going to knock it out this week for the rest of the time we have of June. Listen, July is right around the corner. July 1st is this Friday. And so everyone has to focus on being very intentional in how we're going to close out this month and thrust into the month of July. Well, you know what? We're ending this month in our podcast series for June in a very powerful way. We have a special guest that's joining us today, and I'm going to let Dr. Leroy McKenzie do a formal introduction. But listen, I need you to tell all of your friends, your business colleagues, leaders in the community to chime in right now because we're about to kick off this podcast, and it's going to thrust us into July. Dr. Leroy.
Good morning, everyone. It's your boy, Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr. And as Catherine said, we are, in July already. Oh my gosh. It's the third quarter of 2022. And we want to end June, but we want to begin the third quarter of July with a powerful message for you all. And the gentleman that is we're about to introduce to you all, I couldn't think of anybody better to be able to do that than Dr. Will Moreland himself. I'm going to let him introduce himself because if I tried to, I couldn't even do what I would try to do because it would just be so long of just how accomplished and just how moving, motivating this young man is, not just for I think everyone, but for me personally. So I'm gonna let him just start off by just telling us a little bit about himself, who Dr. Moreland is, and then we'll get into our conversation as we always do on these Tuesday mornings for the for the good morning to the leader in you. So good morning, Dr. Will. Are you with us?
Good morning, Doc and CT. I'm extremely excited to be here with you and your community. Thank you so much for having me. I've been excited, all week long to be with you guys. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Doc, just start, if you can, just start off by introducing yourself to the people and tell them just a little bit about who Dr. Will Moreland is.
Yeah. So the older I get, the longer the story gets. So I'm going to try to make this real short. At the end of the day, I just like to call myself a serial entrepreneur who loves to support people, who loves to be a champion of people. My origination story starts off in a little city called Compton, California. And I was born in Compton at a time where they said Compton was literally the worst city in America. And when I think back on that and I think about the 50 different states and how many cities are in each state, and they pinpointed my city as the worst city in America. And it's important to understand how labeling can impact your mindset. And so growing up, I would repeatedly hear that Compton was the worst city in America. Compton was the worst city in America. And I'll be honest with you guys, me and my friends, we tried to live up to that billing. If we're going to be the worst city in America and that's going to be our label, then we're going to make it true. And so that type of attitude got me into a lot of trouble. I was arrested several times. I was a part of a gang. I used to sell drugs. And then I had a moment, I had an encounter, I had a disruption in my life. When I was 18 years old, I was standing in the front of a California state judge, and he looked at me and he says, "Mr. Moreland, you're headed nowhere fast. You're headed nowhere fast. If I sentence you today and send you to one of our nice facilities, AKA jail, this will stay with you for the rest of your life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you to leave my courtroom today, and I want you to return in 2 weeks. And I want you to tell me what you're going to do with your life and why I shouldn't put you in one of our nice facilities. I left that courtroom that day and I walked around for about a week and a half, not knowing what I was going to do, what I was going to tell that judge. I had already resolved in my mind that I was headed to jail, that this was going to be my last 2 weeks out on the street, so I might as well live it up. But as fortune would have it, as God would have it, as grace would have it, I had another disruptor. His name was Corey Oliver. He saw me walking in the mall one day, and he says, "Hey, man, have you ever thought about joining the Army?" And at that moment, I knew that this was my escape. I had never thought about joining the Army before, but in that moment, I knew that if I went back to that courtroom and told the judge that I was going to join the Army, that he wouldn't send me to jail. And so I looked at Corey, even not understanding fully what I was saying yes to. I didn't know what was on the other side of that yes, but I just knew in that moment that yes was going to change my life. So I said yes to Corey, and we go back to the recruiting station. I signed up for the military, and here I am. I'm off now to the military. This was the very first time I had ever left the state of California. For an 18-year period, I had never went more than 20 miles outside of Compton, California. So if you can imagine a kid that grows up in a certain situation, understanding a certain mentality, and now all of a sudden, within a 2-month period, I'm on a plane. I'm in a new state. I'm in my second state. By the 6-month point, the Army assigns me to Germany. So here's a kid that has never been outside of Compton, California, more than 20 miles, never left the state of California, never been on a plane, never been in another state. Here I am now in a whole new country, 8,000 miles away. And this is what happened. Physically, I was 8,000 miles away, but mentally, I was still in Compton. I still saw the world from the eyes of a kid that grew up in Compton. And so within 2 months of me being at my new duty station, I was getting ready to get kicked out the Army because I got into a fight. As a matter of fact, this was maybe my 4th fight, because the way I grew up, when someone looked at you, that meant that they wanted confrontation. So I didn't understand that when I joined the military and individuals would look at me, they were looking at me because here was a kid from the West Coast, and maybe they were from the East Coast, maybe they were from New York. And so in New York, they were wearing the Timbos and they were wearing the goose down jackets. And here, this kid from Compton, I had on Chuck Taylors, some khakis, and a white t-shirt. So it just looked different to them. But as they looked at me, I thought their inquisitive look was a challenge. So every time somebody looked at me, I was ready to fight. So this last particular fight, I hurt the guy really bad, and my leader, he's looking to throw me out the military. And I had my 3rd disruptor, a gentleman by the name of Command Sergeant Major Babs. He tells me, he says, "Moreland, I saw your record. I see where you're from. If I kick you out of the Army, where you going, man? You going back to Compton? You're going to end up in jail? You're going to end up dead? Is that what you want for your life?" And I looked at him. I said, "No, Sergeant Major, that's not what I want for my life." He says, "This is what I'm going to do for you. I'm not going to kick you out. I'm going to let you come work for me." And he allowed me to come be his personal assistant. And in that relationship, he began to ask me questions that I had never been asked before. And one of the first questions he asked me, he says, "Will, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Now, by this time, I'm 19 years old. Nobody had ever asked me that, because all I had heard my whole life was, "You're probably going to be dead by the time you're 18, or you're probably going to end up in jail anyway." But he asked me a visionary question. And you guys know the proverb says, where there is no vision, people perish. And that's definitely what was happening in my life, because I didn't have a vision for my life. But Sergeant Major opened me up to the possibility that I could be more, do more, and achieve more. And by him asking me that question, it got me to thinking, "Will, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And so Sergeant Major said, "I want you to go home this weekend, and on Monday, I want you to come back and tell me where you see yourself." I came back and I said, "Sergeant Major, all I know at this point is I want to be the best soldier I can be. and I want to get back into school. I want to get my college degree. He looked at me, he said, I can support you in that. I can help you in that. And for me, that kind of began my journey of personal development. I get into college, I start taking college courses, and a lady inside of my speech class, Miss Compton, she says, hey, I have a book I want to give you. And she gives me this book. She said, I think it'll help you. She gives me this book, and it was called Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice by Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. And as I began to read that book, I was overcome with excitement, but I was also despondent because I said, how had I never heard of these amazing African-American people doing amazing things in life? I was inspired, but I was also like, man, where have I been my whole life? I've never heard of John H. Johnson. I've never heard of Earl Graves. I've never heard of these amazing individuals. I've never heard of Reginald F. Lewis. And as I'm reading this book, I come across another book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Written by Reginald F. Lewis. And when I read that book, it changed everything for me because now I had a blueprint. I had somebody that looked like me. I had someone that sounded like me. I had someone that came from a neighborhood like me that I could now model. And from that time of 20 years old, reading that book, I began to model my life after Reginald F. Lewis. I said, if he could come from the same situation I came from and make it and be the first billionaire Black CEO, I could do the same thing. And so that's kind of a long story short of how we make it here, where I'm now able to be with you guys on this fantastic podcast.
Wow. Dr. Leroy, I mean, it's just phenomenal. Doctor, what are your sentiments? That I actually personally, I've been writing down some notes. Thing that struck me immediately was life disruptions. But Dr. Leroy, you take it away, and then I'll chime in.
No, I've been blown away just by the story, and it captures you because it shows you the path that we may think that we have in our life. It looks nothing like what the path that we actually in God has for us, and just the phenomenal like you said, disruptions that he has. And I love that word disruptions, how I think when we think back, I know I've had, let's say disruptors, people that have poured into your life. And just really quickly, I always think about in high school, I had my Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 teacher, Miss Reagan, Miss Jean Reagan. I will never forget her as long as I live. I call her my second mom. She is that person, like Dr. Will had, that was my disruptor. She was the one that took me in. And Doc, I used to hate, she would pick on me in class, and she would pick on me in class and have me, I'm like, and she would have me stay after school. And I'd be like, Miss Reagan, why are you always picking on me and everything like that? And she was like, because she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Just as Dr. Will was talking about the people that he had, and it's like they saw something in him that he didn't necessarily see in himself. And she did, and she lived not far from me, so she would drive me home, and we would have those conversations. We would have the conversations about what I wanted to be in life, what I wanted to do, and she prepared me for the things that I would have to encounter. It was always, you got to be better, you do better, and being prepared for the things that life was going to be. I went to she got me into the Upward Bound program that I was in, and the college that I went to, which was University of Maryland Eastern Shore, as a result of that. But the different things that she poured into me are things that have stayed with me throughout my life now. So those disruptors are those people who are disruptors in our life. I'm forever grateful for mine. And I know Dr. Will, you can just tell from the way he talks about them that he is thankful and grateful for those people that we have in our lives that see in us what we can't see in ourselves. So I leave it to you, Kat.
Yeah, no, I was writing down what struck me also. What came to my mind is what are we saying to the young people? Because he had said during that time when he was young, to his friend, to him and to his friends, it was constantly repeated about Compton or the perception of Compton. And so they own that perception. So the question we also have to ask ourselves is with the youth that's in our community, what are we saying to the youth? What words of affirmation to build them up, or what words are we saying that's tearing them down? And so we have to be so conscious, not only with young people, whomever, but specifically it is so poignant because when whatever you speak to a young person, they can consume that language that's being spoken and they can morph and turn into that. But what was so interesting, again, when he started talking about life disruptions, he took us on this journey, right? The judge was a disruptor because the judge posed a question. And then after he posed a question, it was a 2-week interim, right? And in that 2 week, he met someone that posed a question about, you ever considered military? Then when he got into the military, then there was another disruptor, which was it was this was the captain. I believe it was one of the military personnel high up in rank, right? Who was that, Dr. Will?
That was Command Sergeant Major Babs.
Yes, the commander. He then posed a question, and then he was another disruptor in your pathway. And it was so interesting. Then you talked about how you evolved and you went to college, and there was another disruptor, which was the speech professor. And so I think about this, and everything that Dr. Will just shared are things that we can really embrace in our life. And sometimes we go through detours and turns, and it looked like U-turns. We don't know what's going on. What I got from everything that he shared was, I need to look at my life and see where those disruptors are that's helping usher me to the direction that I need to go into. And sometimes we look at disruptions in a bad way. But now after hearing Dr. Will, we all should be able to think about that a little bit different in terms of how those disruptors honestly redirect our path into the path that we're supposed to be going into. Then it was another thing that he said that I thought was significant. He mentioned when he went to the military and he had transitioned. He physically no longer was in Compton. He was now in the military, but his mindset was still back home. And sometimes we got to look at that as ourselves as leaders in the community. Sometimes, we've been given that charge as a leader. This show's called Good Morning to the Leader in You. We've been given the charge as a leader, but sometimes we have not got to that level where we are actually walking in our leadership capacity because sometimes maybe our mindset is stuck in a different time period, or our mindset is stuck in the past of things that we have not been able to get over. But I think the beautiful thing is about his testimony is that he was able to be, one, transparent, and number two, that shows us that if we're going to grow and evolve, we can't stay stuck in the past. We have to deal with it, face it, not ignore what the feelings are, not ignore what we dealt with, but own it, face it, so we can move forward. And another point that I was taking notes as he was talking that really grabbed me is, who are we modeling after? Who are we modeling after, right? Dr. Will took us through his journey, right? In terms of individuals that he was modeling after. So the thing that we have to ask ourselves, who are we modeling after, but also who are we modeling for the next generation that is to come? Dr. Leroy, Dr. Will.
No, I think that you're absolutely right, and I think even now, as entrepreneurs, and as we were talking about these disruptors, I think about even now as entrepreneurs, how we have to have those disruptors in our lives, those people that we model after, like you were saying, who are we modeling after, what are we doing, and then even on the other side of that, like you were saying, how are we being a model? Are we pouring into that next generation of entrepreneurs that are coming along, or the next generation, period? Because I've always said this, that it's every generation's responsibility to make it better for the next generation. That's our responsibility, because we're the ones, and I call us, those of us that are in our 60s, 50s, and maybe even 40s. We're the now generation. We're the individuals that are in corporate America. We're the managers. We're the commanders. We're those that are in those positions of leadership. And what are we doing with it? What are we doing with it? How are we equipped? And then are we equipping? That's it. That's one of the things that when I started my business, it was one of the passions that I had, because I saw there was such a lack of leadership in the people that were in positions of leadership. I felt that they didn't understand. They didn't really understand the position, what a leader was, or they weren't equipped to be leaders in those positions. So I think it's vitally important that we understand who we are as leaders now, and we now become the disruptors for the next generation. So, Dr.
Absolutely.
Will, I'll let you chime in on that.
So I want to
Oh,
pose a question though to Dr. Will. There was a conversation among some leaders, and they said, you know, one specifically had said, well, I don't feel that I'm equipped. I feel deficient. I don't even feel, because of that, because of my deficiency, how can I even step out in my leadership capacity? What would you say to that, Dr. Will?
Yeah, so you and Leroy are bringing up some great points. Whenever I've been teaching leadership now for the last 20 years, and I always tell everybody that I talk to that everyone is a leader. Everyone, when you look at the simple definition of leadership, leadership is influence. So if leadership is influence, that means we all influence someone. Even if you're the guy hanging out on the street, you're the guy hanging out at the liquor store, you're influencing someone. Someone's going to see you and want to come hang out with you. And so when someone comes and hangs out with you and says, hey man, what you doing? And you say, man, I'm just hanging out. You influence that person. You led that person to hanging out. So if all of us are leaders, then the next question becomes, what type of leader do you want to be? And we've all had a wide range of leaders. We've had awful leaders. We've had amazing leaders. We've had exceptional leaders. And so it goes back to the philosopher who said, the unexamined life is a life not worth living. If anyone feels that they don't have the leadership capital or the leadership capacity to lead, it's because they haven't examined their life. If each and every one of us would begin to, at a deep level, not just go through life, but begin to examine our life, we'll understand that's where our leadership credibility comes from. That's where our leadership confidence comes from. It comes from what we've been through. It comes from what we've experienced. I tell people all the time, every single day that you wake up, it's a reminder that you're undefeated in life. You're undefeated in life, meaning no matter what at that point, before that day that you woke up, that means you have conquered, overcome, survived everything that life has ever tried to throw at you. And so that means you're undefeated. Every morning that you wake up and your eyes pop open, you're undefeated, and you got to remind yourself. And then when you start examining your life, you'll begin to see that your whole life was your preparation zone. Your whole life was your preparation for what you've been called to do, what you've been assigned to do. You know, there's a Bible scripture that says, referring to Jesus, by his stripes, we are healed. By his stripes, we are healed. Notice, the stripes didn't do anything for him. It did everything for the people he was serving. In the same way, everything that we've been through, it wasn't about us. It wasn't for us. It's for the people that we serve. See, I can now go into the prison. I can now go into what they would consider at-risk locations and at-risk areas because that's where I come from. And so that preparation now allows me to create connection, to create relationship. And as a leader, that's how you lead most effectively, is through relationship and through connection. And so relationship, the root word is relate. And so when you start to think of all the experiences that you've had, when I was a young man, I was molested. So now I can go into group homes and I can go into the jails and I can talk to even older men who have experienced that. Now we have something to relate to. But if I continue to look at myself as, woe as me, look what happened to me, look at all of this that happened to me instead of what happened for me, because everything that I've experienced, it happened for me to prepare me to be the leader I am today.
Absolutely. And I think the whole piece, and I was writing notes again as you were sharing, and what I wrote as you were talking is your whole life was preparing you for your now moment. And that's what that was my takeaway, because a lot of times we've gone through transitions, we've gone through things in our life, and it's like, what do we do with the life that's been given to us? How do we live it? How do we make purpose of it? How do we make purpose of the mess? How do we make purpose of the challenges? How do we make purpose of the things we went through in life? And for everyone that's tuning in now and tuning in later, definitely share this. But we do want to also give a shout out to those that's tuning in. I want to give a shout out to Miss Peggy Long Hudley from the Maryland area. She's a business owner with Every Day's a Gift. I also want to give a shout out to author Angelia. She's from the Texas area. Again, business owners, leaders, as you are tuning in, feel free to drop your business information in the chat box as we are flowing with this podcast on today. And at different times, we'll give a shout out to your business. But I think everyone that's watching now and those that's going to watch later, that one of the takeaways that we can get from this whole dialogue is that your mess can turn into a message. Different things that you've gone through, right? Look for the disruptors. Even it doesn't matter what age we are, because we still got more living to do. There's going to be some more disruptions that's going to come, that's going to redirect us, that's going to put us on a path of detour, and with that detour leading us to where we need to go. So I think it's about a shift in our mindset to say, you know what, even though I'm dealing with this most challenging thing in my life, how can I make it and turn it into a purpose? And how can I then model for someone else and pull them out of a dark space? Dr. Leroy.
Yeah, I want to ask Dr. Will this, because we're entering into this shift now. I was talking about this the other day, so I'd like to get your perspective on it, and Catherine as well. We had a shift going into the pandemic. There was this shift that was a disruptor. It was a disruptor, and we had to adjust then, and we've had to make this adjustment over the past 2.5 going on 3 years. And now that we seem to be shifting and moving out of the pandemic, what do you see for those that are leaders? How should they be approaching how should they be approaching this shifting out of the pandemic as leaders and then as entrepreneurs as well? I'd really like to get your take on that.
Yeah, so I'm a principle-based person. I live my life according to principles, because principles, they never change, and principles, they govern everyone, no matter who you are, short, tall, skinny, fat, black, white, Asian, or whatever. Principles, what goes up must come down. It doesn't matter who you are. So when we start looking at the pandemic and we start looking at recessions, historically speaking, and I've studied this, historically speaking, especially here in America, you find that anywhere between every 7 to 10 years, there's some type of event that causes us to shift. Whether you go back to 2008, it's the recession. Whether you go back to 2000, it's the 2001, it's the 9/11. If you go before 9/11, you had the Valdez oil spill. If you go beyond that, you have the crack epidemic. So there's always, these shifts going on every 7 to 10 years. And so if you understand that and you live yourself off of principles, and you understand the principle of vision. So when these ebbs and flows happen, what keeps you consistent is your vision. So for me, even though we're in a pandemic or coming out of a pandemic, my companies, they did better in the pandemic because inside the pandemic, we had a vision, and our vision was to hit particular numbers and to hit particular KPIs. And so we didn't focus on the pandemic, even though the pandemic happened and we had to shift. Our shift was about how do we need to shift to continue to reach our vision. It wasn't how do we shift to survive or how do we shift because of the pandemic. Our shift was all about fulfilling the vision. And so for my team, I just kept as a leader pointing them toward the vision. What is the vision? In January, what did we say we wanted to accomplish this year? So when the pandemic hit in March, we weren't focused on the pandemic, we were focused on the vision. This is how many clients we want to serve. So inside the pandemic, how creative do we need to be to continue to serve our clients? And so as a leader that's listening to us, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, my challenge for you is to really revisit your vision. Most people, they just live in happenstance life. Like however life happens, that's how I'm going to live. But when you live by vision, now you have something different to look at. So while everybody was looking at the pandemic, while everybody now is looking at gas prices, we're not looking at that because that's not a part of our vision. I'll tell you this story. I was talking to Kevin Eastman, and Kevin Eastman used to be the operations manager for the Los Angeles Clippers. And he was working with the Clippers when Doc Rivers was the coach. And if you guys remember with the Clippers, and forgive me for those of you that are not sports fans, but the Clippers is an NBA team. If some of you remember, they had an owner by the name of Donald Sterling. And Donald Sterling came out and it was found that he was racist and he had said some real demeaning things about Black people, about Magic Johnson. And I asked Kevin Eastman, I said, Kevin, during that time, what was your message and what was Doc Rivers' message to the team? And he says, man, Doc Rivers, their head coach, he says, he's so brilliant. He called the team together and he asked these gentlemen, he says, let me ask you guys something. When you were little kids dribbling the basketball and going to practice and dreaming about going to the NBA, was Donald Sterling a part of that dream? When you dreamed about winning an NBA championship, was Donald Sterling a part of that dream? And each of those 15 players that was on the team, they all said, no, we didn't ever see Donald Sterling. Then Doc Rivers said to them, then he's irrelevant. We'll handle him. The NBA will handle him, but we're not going to lose our vision of winning a championship. We're not going to lose our focus. And so if you don't have a strong picture and a strong image of where you're going, you'll always be distracted. That's why in a horse race, they always put the blinders on the horse so the horse won't get distracted by what's on the left and the right. The only thing the horse can focus on is the goal line. And so as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, you got to be focused on your vision. You got to be focused on your goals. You can't be distracted by the outside noise. And so right now we're hearing a lot of outside noise. And once again, it's about the circle of influence. What can you really influence? What can you really control? And so I can't control gas prices. I can't control who's going to be necessarily the next president of the United States. I can't control this or that. All I can control is what's in my control, and that's all I try to control.
Yeah, so the question in terms of you posed about the whole COVID-19 and the shifting that took place around COVID-19. I mean, I just really echo what Dr. Will has been saying. And I think what struck home for me is that if you focus on the vision and not the distractors, and then I like the analogy that he used in reference to the racehorse, how they are blinded so they won't get distracted on what's happening to the left or what's happening on the right. And I think sometimes us as leaders, we can become distracted to what's happening around us. And so for me during COVID-19, I just had to stay focused on the vision. I just had to stay focused on, what the purpose was. And I think it was a nugget Dr. Will also dropped as business owners. This is a nugget. And as I was hearing him talk, he also said something. You got to know your numbers, because when he had a conversation with his team, they knew what their numbers was. And sometimes we don't hit our financial goals or our business goals because we don't know our numbers. Now, coupled with that, you can't just be money hungry, knowing your numbers and just trying to get all the clients. But he also said, are you serving your clients? He talked about being a servant to who you are, working with, who you're providing services for. But if you don't even know your numbers, you don't know your target audience, and then you're not going to properly service because the business is kind of wobbly. It's all over the place. So knowing your numbers for those business owners that's listening now or that's going to listen later, it's very important when you're building a business. You got to know what you're trying to hit per quarter. And even as he was talking, it sounded like his process was very methodical in terms of how he approached his business model along with his team. So I think even we don't know what's about to happen, right? Even with what happened in COVID-19, it rocked everybody's world. Everybody was shocked. But I think it's a principle to learn from that we need to always be ready. We need to always be ready no matter what shifting is going to happen. We can't predict what's going to happen, but what we can do is know our numbers. And what we can do is put a system in place so whatever may happen, we will be like that you know, that horse on the racetrack, not getting distracted what's happening on the left, not getting distracted what's happening on the right. And I think a lot of times we get distracted because we listening to the wrong people. We have too many wrong people in our ear, and we're soaking up information where people may will want to dilute the vision. Because when the vision is diluted, we're not going to go at it in a certain stamina or have the passion for it, because we're around vision killers. So I think that's another piece of the conversation when you're talking about COVID-19 and that disruption that happened. People wanted to cast the vision to some business owners. Well, because of COVID-19, your business can't thrive. Those were vision killers. But then also you read similar stories though where businesses did not go under. You heard some stories where businesses took off. So it's all about who you're listening to, even the voices that you're speaking to yourself. What are we speaking to ourselves? Are we killing the vision? Are we around vision killers that's going to create the environment for us not to move forward? Or are we around a team of people that we're talking about what are our numbers and how we're going to be a servant to our target audience? Dr. Leroy.
Yeah, and you just hit on something, Tina. I think Dr. Will mentioned it too, is who are you around? You know, and I call it my circle of impact. I think Dr. Will said the circle of influence. Those people that you surround yourself with are key to how you get through something, or even how you get someone through something, because we're looked at, you know, those that are leaders are going to be, people are going to look to, like when Dr. Will was talking about the Clippers, those players were looking to Coach Rivers, Dr. Rivers. They were looking to him. They were looking to the other gentleman to see how they get through that. And had they had another mindset, another approach to it, that could have gone way left in doing all of that. So it's key that we have those people around us, that circle of impact that pour into you, the right thing into you, but then also that you pour into, because that's just as important. And I call that my picture in the glass theory, which is where, you know, when you go to a restaurant and you're sitting at the table places, there's a glass at each table. There's a glass at each setting, rather. And then they'll bring out a pitcher of water, a pitcher of soda, a pitcher of lemonade, whatever it is that they bring out. And that pitcher is used to pour into those glasses. Well, sometimes we're the pitcher that we pour into, that we pour into others. Doc Rivers was that pitcher at that time. He was the pitcher for those young men. And then there are times where we're the glass, and we have to get poured into, where we listen to those that we need to get, kind of advice from, or things from. Those young men, the NBA players, they were the glasses. They were getting poured into, because they needed to know how to be able to handle this situation. How do we get through this? What do we need to get through it? So your circle of influence, your circle of impact, those are key to you being able to navigate and get through getting through situations. And especially as leaders, we have to understand when we're the pitcher, when we're the glass, when we listen, and when we pour into. I think that's vitally important. So
absolutely. I want to give another shout out to James O. Johnson from the Florida area. He has a nonprofit organization where he's working with youth in the community. So thank you so much, Mr. James, for tuning in. Again, everyone that's watching, as you're tuning in on the Facebook feed, you can drop your business information. And you can also share this link to other leaders, other business owners out there, and get the golden nuggets that's being shared. I like to call it golden nuggets because it's something we can chew on. It's something that we can also implement in our everyday life as we continue to progress forward. Dr. Will, I was on your Facebook page and I saw something that talked about for individuals that want to learn about going into the speaking industry. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so we have a Speakers Academy, Genius Speakers Academy, where we support other speakers, authors, entrepreneurs, leaders, and consultants who want to really build a thriving speaker business. When I got into the speaking industry almost 20 years ago, one of the things that I did not have was the information and the support and the knowledge to build a business. I had the passion, I had the motivation, I had the story, but I didn't have the business principles. And so when I created the Academy, what I wanted to do was create a community of connection where when you join our certification program, you're not just getting certified as a speaker, but you're joining a community, because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you realize that you know, when you look at your circle, you're probably the only entrepreneur in your circle. Your family members are probably not entrepreneurs. Your best friends are probably not entrepreneurs. So it could kind of get lonely. So I wanted to build out a community where you could come literally every single day. We have something going on inside the community that inspires, that motivates, that instructs you, that teaches you, that informs you how to build your business. Once again, going through the pandemic, you know, for speakers, all the stages were shut down. So what we did for our speakers were, number one, we gave them strategies. We gave them strategies, and it goes back to being able to make that shift. So inside the pandemic, just to give you an example, inside the pandemic, our vision for my company per se was to have $1 million in sales, $1 million in sales. So understanding the numbers for us, that's 10 clients paying us $100K. So we already had our programs in place, but when the pandemic happened, those programs necessarily didn't serve the need or the problem that our clients were having. So we went to our clients and we said, what problems are you having right now? Man, our people don't know how to use Zoom. Man, our leaders don't know how to lead from a non-work perspective. They don't know how to lead in a virtual community. So we went back and we created programs how to teach their leaders how to lead in virtual situations, how to conduct a Zoom meeting. And so we had to shift. And so that's what we taught our speakers how to do. Go back to your clients. When clients were saying, well, we're going to have to cancel the live event. No, we don't have to cancel the whole thing. We don't have to do it live, but we can do it virtual. And I can come on and I can teach you how to set up this virtual conference so we can still have the conference. So we taught our speakers how to do that. So that's our GSA program. And you can find more about that. Just go to drwillspeaks.com/academy. And you'll find out all about the academy and the certification program that we have, how we support our speakers on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I'm on it now. Two things that grabbed me on the flyer. One thing, it said no fluff. And one of the other points, it said proven strategies. For those that's tuning in now, tuning in later, you want to tie into something that you're not going to get a whole bunch of stuff that's fluff, and it's not something that you can actually sink your teeth in and implement. And the other piece of the puzzle that I saw on the flyer says proven strategies. I think anyone who's tuning in now is going to listen later. Everything Dr. Will is saying, and even how he's delivering it, you can hear that it's based on a method. It's not just wake up in the morning and let's see what's going to stick. It's a method, right? So for those of you that need additional assistance in that area, again, you can go to his website. On Facebook, it's Dr. Will Speaks, and he definitely can plug some of his other contact information. But what I just also got, and I don't want anybody to miss what he just said, knowing how to shift your business offerings when you need to stay relative. They had their particular package already set before COVID-19 happened, already set. But when COVID-19 happened, they knew that they had to shift to stay relative, to still keep a marketplace for their business to be in the marketplace, right? So that's what we have to ask ourselves. As cycles and seasons change, we have to be willing to shift, right? We talked about disruptors in a way in which when we're guided to be, you know, redirected, but also we have to be pliable to shift with our business offerings so we can still stay relative and stay in the marketplace. Dr. Leroy, any comments on that or anything else you want to share?
No, it's actually, I think it's actually, you made it key, and Dr. Will was talking about what he did with his business. It went right into what he was saying about staying focused on the vision and the principles of the vision. And that's all he did with his, with his team when he got together with his team, and then he started to talk with the speaker clients that he has. It's like, here's the same thing that we're telling you, or that we talked about doing. Here's how you handle it going through the disruption or disruptors with that particular, in that having to deal with the pandemic, all of those things. So I think it's very important that we just understand what he just talked to us about, just told us and poured into us, and how important that is. Yeah, we're going to have ebbs and flows. We're going to have shifts that we have to make. But the important thing is that we continue to understand, like you were saying, Kevin, the numbers, but then also the vision. The numbers the numbers, we still want to get to where we want to get to. We just have to understand that we have to have another direction, another way of being able to get to that spot because of the obstacle that has been put in the way. We're still getting there, but we still know where we're trying to get to, I think is important.
And Dr. Will, I want you to comment on this. I'm on your page again, and it says something, and I want you to speak to the hearts of those who's listening now and listening later, because I think this is significant. It says, sitting with Les Brown 12 years ago, and he told me, Will, your voice is too powerful to remain quiet. Since that day, I've been committed to impact, inspire, and influence the world. Talk to those leaders out there that may feel, and you've been doing it so wonderful already, but as we get ready to wind down, any last words of encouragement you can share, even with what how Les Brown poured into you, and as you're pouring into others, even as we speak. And when he said your voice is too powerful to remain quiet, talk to those that's remaining quiet right now, that need to get into the game. Can you speak to them?
Certainly. So many times, and you talked about this earlier, CT, a lot of times we feel inadequate. And so you have to borrow someone else's belief in you sometimes. You have to borrow someone else's belief. You may not even believe in yourself. And that's what Dr. Leroy talked about, your circle of impact. You have to have people in your life that see your greatness, that see beyond where you are, that see your vision, that see you inside that vision. And so for anybody that's listening to us right now, even going back to our academy, that's a part of the academy. We support our students in helping them see themselves in a bigger way. I tell our students all the time, your message is someone's medicine. Your message is someone's medicine. And sometimes, CT, we get caught up in the packaging. Oh, my website's not right. Oh, my card's not right. Oh, my green screen is not right. So I can't get out there. I can't do a video yet. I don't like the way my voice sounds. I don't like the way my nose looks. Oh, my hair, I'm having a bad hair day. But here's the deal. If someone's drowning, they don't care if you don't have a CPR certification. They don't care if you don't know how to swim or not. They don't care if you're not a lifeguard. All they need you to do is stick your hand out there. All they need you to do is put a floating device out there. All they need for you to do is stick a rod out there to get them back on the boat. And so your message being so powerful, the service that you provide being so powerful, stop getting caught up in perfection, because perfection is an illusion. You're always going to find a way to improve what you're doing. You're always going to find a way to better your best, but you don't want to get where you get so many people get paralysis and they get stuck because they're trying to be perfect. People ask me, Dr. Will, how have you written 50 books? I've written 50 books because I wasn't trying to write a perfect book. I was trying to write a book that I felt could help someone. I had some information that I felt if I shared it in this format, it could help you. I'm not trying to, when I come on podcasts, when I go and speak, I'm not trying to impress people. I'm not trying to impress you. I have a speech impediment. I have dyslexia. And so I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not the greatest speaker. What I will put up against anybody is my consistency to show up. Since the moment, March of 2009, when I made the commitment to every single day, Monday through Friday, I'm going to share something positive on my Facebook page. Since 2009 to 2022, I haven't missed a beat. So is Dr. Will the best? That's an opinion. But is Dr. Will consistent? He's consistent. So you can go all the way back to March 2009 and look at my message. Man, this guy through a recession, through a pandemic, through a Trayvon Martin, through a George Floyd, through a Donald Trump, all this dude has done is shared a positive message every single day, because that's my lane. I'm not a political analyst. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a coach. And so that's the lane that I stay in. So for those of you, once again, examining yourself, how should you best let your light shine? When you figure out how you should let your light shine, then consistently let your light shine. And whatever you need to do to continuously letting that light shine, that's what you do. You know, there's another proverb that says, in everything, give thanks. So in everything, give thanks. So whatever's going on, going back to and let me share this, going back to the Clippers story, look what happened. And Dr. Leroy, you alluded to it. If the players got distracted, look what would have happened. When the NBA came down, they removed Donald Sterling from being the owner. When they removed Donald Sterling from being the owner, they got a brand new owner. They got one of the CEOs of Microsoft, Ballmer, to come and buy the team. Now, the Clippers, I'm from California. The Clippers have been bottom feeders my whole entire life. They were playing in the same arena as the Lakers were playing. Like they were the JV team all my life. Ballmer comes in, he pays $2 billion for the Clippers. What does that do? Because he paid $2 billion for the Clippers, the evaluation of every other team went up. So if the Clippers are worth $2 billion, the Lakers have to be worth $5 billion. The Celtics have to be worth $5 billion, right? Everybody profited when this guy got moved away, right? People, Kawhi Leonard wanted to come to the Lakers. Wanted to come to the Clippers. The Clippers are now getting a brand new stadium. Donald Sterling never wanted to invest in the team. But if they would have looked at that at a negative situation and not kept the vision of the dream of being a champion, Ballmer put them in position to be champions. They hadn't been to the playoffs in like 15 to 20 years. But if everybody focused on Donald Sterling and his negativity, everything else would have been missed. And so stop focusing on what you don't have. Focus on what you do have. And what you do have is a lifetime of experiences. What you do have is a lifetime worth of lessons that somebody can benefit from. All you have to do to lead is just be one step in front of somebody. You don't have to be 20 steps. You don't have to be 50 steps. Just one step in front of somebody and you can lead them.
Wow, wow, wow. The consistency to show up and keep the vision of the dream. Dr. Will, can you please plug all of your contact information, how people can follow with you? And then Dr. Leroy, if you can please share your contact information as well.
Yes, certainly. So once again, it's very simple. Dr. Will Speaks, DrWillSpeaks. Dr. Will Speaks at all social media platforms. And then that's also my website, drwillspeaks.com. I would love to support you in any way. I would love to follow you, see what work you're doing in this world. So please follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, stop by our website, see what we're doing, how we're supporting entrepreneurs, how we're supporting business owners and speakers and authors and consultants. Once again, Dr. Will Speaks at all social media platforms, and then drwillspeaks.com is the website.
Absolutely. Dr. Leroy, thank you so much for
Don't
sharing.
forget that YouTube channel either. So go visit his YouTube channel. There's plenty of motivational, just great information that you all will find on the YouTube channel as well. But you can find me on all social media, on Facebook, Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., or my company, JNF Enterprises. My website is jnfenterprises.com. Instagram is Dr. LJ Speaks, and then YouTube is JNF Enterprises. Twitter, Dr. Leroy McKenzie, in LinkedIn. I'm sorry, LinkedIn is Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr. as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can find me on my website, www.catherinetrotter.com. On Twitter is CT Speaks, and Instagram and Facebook is CTR Strategy Solutions. Again, that's CTR Strategy Solutions. This is one of those episodes that I know personally I'm going to hit the replay. There's so many things that was said, and there's so many things that I personally have been inspired. And I hope all of you that's watching now and that's going to watch the replay will be inspired as well. But don't hold it to yourself. Share the link. Spread this message about keeping the vision and live by the vision. That was another thing that I wrote down as he was talking. Live by the vision. And with that being said, we always end it by saying we're going to see you at the top. Have a wonderful day.